Welcome everyone today to the Society of Thoracic Surgeons Congenital Heart Surgery Database User Group call. Today is Tuesday, November the 2nd. I hope you guys are having a nice fall day. Our agenda today, welcome introductions, STS update, IQVIA update, and then we'll end as usual with our user feedback. If you have questions, please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A function. And I believe the raise hand function is enabled if you need to elaborate or have a question you'd just like to chat instead of putting it in the Q&A. Just please use that raise hand function and ensure that your microphone is enabled. On the call with me today, let's see, we have myself from STS, we have Carol Crone, Addie Dolan, Emily Conrad, and Catherine Holyfield. Let's see here, we also have Chastity Wellnuts, we have Dr. Meyer, Dr. Jacobs, and then from our IQVIA team, we have Michelle, Melanie, Joe, and Jean. So thanks everyone for joining today. Let's go ahead and get started for our STS updates. As you all are aware, the 2020 harvest analysis, those risk-adjusted reports were released on Monday, October the 11th. Our 2021 harvest update, STS did some out a formal communication with the harvest close announcement. The 2021 harvest will be closing on Friday, December the 10th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. The last date to opt out is Tuesday, December the 14th. If you would like to opt out and you need to, if you can't locate the link to the opt-out form, it is out on the harvest instructions and information page. If you have trouble finding it, please reach out to me directly and I can send you the link. But again, the harvest opt-out form is posted out, the link is posted out on the harvest information page. This 2021 analysis will include procedures up through 6/30/2021. And of course, the 4-year analytic period will include July 1, 2017 through 6/30/2021. Just wanted to give a quick AQO update. As we discussed in the last call, access to the virtual platform ended on October the 29th. All of that content is now available in the STS Learning Center and will be available until AQO of 2022. CE, CEU certificates will be processed on a monthly basis prior to the month's completions. And again, this rolling system will continue for 3 months and will end on January the 15th of 2022. Just real quick, I wanted to show you, I know many of you may not be familiar with the Online Learning Center. So if you're on the STS homepage, if you hover over the Online Learning button and scroll down here to click on STS Learning Center. From this page, you can just click on this link here to the new STS Learning Center, and it will bring you to your login page. And of course, here you would use your login information that was used at AQO. So just gonna walk, of course, it's probably not gonna work now. Actually, shocker, there we go. So, and of course, this will bring you to the STS Learning Center. And here, over here on the right-hand side, you have a link to the 2021 Advances in Quality and Outcomes Data Managers meeting. So all of the information can be found out on the STS Learning Center. Also, Emily did let me know if you do go out from the virtual to the virtual platform and you click on that link, you will be redirected to the STS Learning Center as well. So again, if you have any issues locating this information or with your access, just please reach out to us directly. We can get you help you with getting access to the Learning Center. Also wanted to go ahead and provide, we do have the 2022 harvest schedule is now available. I think marketing is still in the process of getting this updated on the STS website. So again, this information will be posted out on the STS website. Our 2022 harvest schedule will be getting back to our normal schedule for spring 2022. I don't know why I have such a hard time saying that. Spring 2022, the harvest close date is scheduled for March 11th, opt-outs March 15th, and then of course they'll include procedures up to December 31st of 2021, and then report posting available December 22. The fall 22 harvest is scheduled to close September 16th, opt-out date of September the 20th. Again, includes procedures up through June 30th of 22, and the report posting will be available in winter of 22. Just based from I know Chastity covered a lot of this information on our previous webinar, but I did want to go ahead and review this information. Actually, I'll turn it over to Chastity so she can review this information again. As the reports of people are starting to, look at their reports that were released, a lot of questions are coming in. So again, just wanted to provide a quick overview for those of you that were not able to make our last webinar. So I'll just turn it over to Chastity so she can just do a quick review of these slides. Again, for those of you who may not have been able to join us on the last call.
Great, Leanne, thank you. So this is just a reminder that in your current analysis reports, the 3.41 procedures and stat scores were not included as expected or not handled as expected in the analysis. So this centered around the 16 new procedures that were included at the time of the 3.41 upgrade. And if you recall, the stat scores were released later in June of 2020. However, the analysis was not handled as expected. And so when these procedures, much of them are the new, I would say more granular DORV repairs and tetralogy of Fallot repairs. And so when these were done as a part of a multi-component procedure, they were not handled as expected in the analysis. So in some instances, your second procedure may be what was considered the primary procedure, and so on. This will be rectified in the upcoming analysis. So what is going to close in mid-December, the stat scores will be appropriately analyzed in that harvest. So if you're seeing this discrepancy in your reports, it is an absolute known issue. And I know some of us have many cases where this impacted your analysis. So again, this will be rectified immediately in the upcoming data analysis for our data that's due in December. Anything else, Leanne? Oh, and this is the list of the 16 procedures. So if you have one of these coded, it may not have been handled appropriately in the analysis. And so making sure that your surgeons understand this, or that when you're looking at your reports that you also understand this.
Great, thank you, Chad. Sorry about that. I was talking to myself on mute, so sorry about that.
No, you're fine, absolutely.
And then the next thing I just wanted to touch on again, as we had discussed on the last call, post-AQO, the updated 2020 stat score implementation. So the updated scores will be implemented with the spring 22 analysis. They will not be implemented in this 2021. And again, I stole this from Dr. Jacobs' AQO slide. So Dr. Jacobs, the stat update project was published in March of 21. And again, here's the reference for those, because I have gotten asked for information about on the paper. So again, I just wanted to provide this information so you can go out and grab that paper for your surgeons if needed. Before moving on to table 1819, McCall had pointed out, so thank you, McCall. Here under the comments, please disregard the star rating. As you're aware, we don't provide star ratings for congenital anymore, so that was an oversight on my part. So before posting these slides, I'll remove that comment, that star rating. So that I apologize, that should not be there. All right, so moving on, update for tables 18 and 19, as Chastity and we had presented on our last webinar, the median postoperative length of stay. In the initial report release, a new calculation was applied to where we were, the true calculated mean was being presented. And historically, it was calculated as the median of the means. And due to the feedback, that we've gotten post-report release, this calculation will revert back to the median of the mean, the way it was done originally in the historical reports. And of course, this is being done to remove the significant outliers. And once STS and IQVIA, once IQVIA has this new calculation implemented, we will provide you all with a notification of when this change will be reflected in your report. Just please know that this does not require reanalysis from the DCRI side. This is a calculation that happens on the IQVIA side. So once we get this new calculation, or revert back to the old calculation, once we get that implemented, we will provide a notification from you, because Once you go back into your dashboard report, you see the calculations change, your numbers have changed. We'll let you know when that will happen. So you won't be like, oh my gosh, what's happened? It was something, it was completely different yesterday. So we will let you know when that calculation will take effect and will be implemented on the IQVIA side. Also, in regards to analysis report questions, again, just a reminder to please contact IQVIA support if you have questions about your report. Unfortunately, I am not able to assist with those questions like I was in the past. You will need to reach out to tech support. Again, email CHSD tech support at IQVIA.com. STS and DCRI will be looped in as needed when your tickets are elevated to tier 2 for assistance. Again, please just reach out to tech support for any of your report questions so they can take a look at your data, delve into it and start researching. Again, I don't have access to your data. Your surgeons don't have access to your data. So again, if you could please reach out to tech support first and foremost if you have any questions related to what you're seeing in your report. And then again, DCRI and STS will get looped in as needed. With that, I'm just going to turn things over to Joe for our IQVIA updates. Joe?
Great, thank you, Leanne. Good afternoon, everybody. Some items here, some known issues to go over that I think these are repeats, but just to cover them again. STS 7380 in regard to the case eligibility and mortality analysis report. That report should be displaying the MT30 stat variable as missing when the unknown option is selected on the case form. So we will be making an update so that works as expected. In regard to the missing variable report, STS 6892, the MVR is currently flagging data elements as missing even when the demographics form version is prior to when those variables were added. So we'll be adjusting the report logic to correctly take into account the demographics form version so that those are not flagged incorrectly. STS 7282, the anesthesia adverse event. For the anesthesia adverse event, we are going to be updating the calculation so that it gets added to the MVR report. And then STS 7271, COVID-19 variables, temp code and temp date, as well as hematocrit prior to circulatory arrest or cerebral perfusion will be added to the MVR report calculation as well. Next slide. And then some new items in regard to the risk-adjusted dashboard report. For tables 18 and 19, STS 7473, the report is currently showing the same results for length of stay for both the STS overall and the N greater than or equal to 10 categories. And so we're making a correction to the calculations so that those results are brought in line with what is expected. And then kind of on those same lines for STS 7506 and 7509, we'll be making similar updates for the calculations for operative mortality. The STS aggregate percentage and the N greater than or equal to 10 aggregate percentages are currently displaying as the same. So we'll be making the updates so that those are showing you what they should be. STS 7475, on the anesthesia report, calculation updates are required for the anesthesia all operations. The total number of CPB and no CPB cases and the anesthesia CPB, no CPB reports. They're currently displaying different results and they should show you the same total number of cases. So when you add those together right now, it's coming up different and we're working to get those brought in line. And then STS 7486, again, on the anesthesia CPB, no CPB report, records are being counted twice on the cross clamp and DHCA categories. So we're going to be making updates to the behind the scenes calculations on that so that those show you the correct results. And that's it from me. Just the usual reminders that if you did submit something that we didn't discuss today, please understand that we are working on those issues. And we are looking into things to present to you on the next call to let you know what's going on as far as reported issues.
Thank you, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to finish up with our support. Again, you guys are very familiar with this. Please include your participant ID when contacting support. You'll notice on this slide, it's still the STS tech support at IQVIA.com. And on the previous slide, I was mentioning CHSD tech support at IQVIA.com. Both of these emails are valid. Both of them will get you to CHSD tech support. So again, you can use either CHSD tech support at IQVIA.com and also STS tech support at IQVIA.com. List of resources that are available to you out on the STS website. Again, you are all familiar with them. The resource documents, phone, STS National Database feedback form. If you have any questions, just please feel free to reach out to me directly. Contact information, my name, my email, my phone number. If you have database operational questions regarding access to the platform, you need a password reset, or surgeons need access, please reach out to us at stsdb@sts.org. If you have questions related to the contacts currently associated with your site, again, please reach out to us at stsdb@sts.org, and Addie can assist you with those matters. Questions regarding participation agreements, again, those are database operational questions that should be directed to stsdb@sts.org. Upcoming webinars, our next monthly webinar is November 18th at 12 p.m. Central Time, and then our next user group is December 7th at 12 p.m. Central Time. So please be sure to mark your calendars, and as well, marketing will be sending out a reminder prior to the call. That's all that I have from the STS perspective and IQVIA perspective today. Next, we'll turn things over to you all for your questions. I see we've got a couple of things in here. Before we delve into questions, I don't know if anybody had anything to add from the STS or IQVIA side, or we can go ahead and start getting our questions going. All right. I hear nothing, so let's go ahead and tackle our first question from Diane. 2 cases on risk-adjusted report incorrectly captured as stat 2, but it should be stat 5 email. So you do have a ticket number, Diane. Joe, if someone from your team could look into that one. I'm not sure if that's been responded to. And again, Diane, they'll work with you individually on that one. Our next question from Angie. For median post-op length of stay, rather than replacing, can we have both true median and median of the mean? That's a question we could take back to the task force, but it's always, right now they're going to just be reverting back, but that's definitely something that I could take back to the group. And sorry, I'm just making a note. I don't know if Dr. Monner or Dr. Jacobs wanted to add anything to that, but we can definitely take it back to the group.
I'm not sure there's, it's an extra calculation. I'm not sure there's any reason not to do it, but I will definitely have the task force consider it. That's the simplest thing.
Yep, I agree. Okay, thank you, Dr. Meyer. Let's see, Krista. If you have questions, Krista, if you're not sure, there are, I know Chastity has an influx. We had 2 calls last month to cover all of our questions because we couldn't get through them in the first call. So I know there is an influx, and Chastity is working her way through them. So
yes,
just
absolutely, Leanne.
Yeah.
Please be patient. I'm so sorry with the upcoming report release, or now current report release. There are a huge number of questions that have come in, and I am addressing them one by one as they come in, hopefully doing them in order. So then that way, if you've been waiting longer than someone else, that I'm getting to you. So I apologize that there's a delay with the 2 calls last month. We'll hopefully get back on track. And I appreciate all of your questions. I think they're great and we all learn from them.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you, Krista. Let's see. Oh, and Beth, so someone from Jean, your team, so now she's got 2 tickets, but I know, Beth, someone will follow up with you from the IQVIA support team and get that straightened out for you. You're welcome, Beth. All right. I'm not seeing any additional questions come in. I don't want to end so quickly because I know it takes you guys a few moments to. Okay, we've got some more questions coming in. Okay. All right, from Sam. For IQVIA, has anyone reported a problem with the risk-adjusted report that the stat mortality category column of the detail section isn't populating? Melanie, does that sound familiar?
That does not sound familiar, but I think we need some more details. And Sam, if you have a ticket number also, if you can provide that, but which specific report are you looking at? Is it like table 19? Is it table 1? But this, I haven't heard of that. I'm not sure if Joe may have heard of it, but doesn't sound familiar.
No, not familiar to me.
Yeah. All right. All right, Heidi, this may be a question for the surgeons. On the national report, there was a release. It states gender female by surgical option. Can someone elaborate on why it is documented this way rather than both genders? Table 26 specifically references this. What table? I can't remember what table 26 is off the top of my head. If anyone knows.
I would say it's not uncommon when you have a binary field where you would only analyze one versus the other, knowing that, you know, if there are 100 patients and 50 are female, the other 50 are male. So it's not uncommon in publications or in research to see, you know, kind of one, you know, in a binary field where only one is mentioned. I mean, if that's something that people don't like or want to see change, it would be a change in the reports. And again, something that would go back to the task force.
Right. Okay, I don't know if Dr. Jacobs or Dr. Meyer had anything to add there, but it's the aortic stenosis and insufficiency table. Thank you, Heidi. Oh, Sam says he hasn't sent it in yet. It's in table 1 and table 7. So Sam, if you could submit a ticket with IQVIA with that issue, then they could support or reach out to you and work with you to get that, see what's going on there. But it hasn't been a wide spread. You know, we haven't heard that from others across the board. With the known issues, with the risk adjusted report, will the data harvest submission deadline be extended at all? No, not to my knowledge that this deadline would not be extended because we have to get the harvest closed, the data over to analysis, and then get back on schedule for our spring 2020 or get back on schedule for a normal harvest schedule in 2022. So, and then due to other internal deadlines we have to meet, then we really don't have a lot of flexibility with this December 10 deadline. But as of now, it's not, there's no discussions to extend it. Do we feel the data in table 1 is correct with the issues with other tables? Melanie, did you want to address this one? Or as far as I'm aware, I know we're looking into table 1 at table 18 and 19 that you had discussed earlier.
Didn't have, Janet, I can reach out to you. I need to get specific information in regards to what other issues you're indicating. Numbers not matching up. Okay. So we need, if you have a ticket, either I believe it's Heidi or Janet, if you already have a ticket, if you can provide that ticket number and we can take a look. But the items that we had listed on the slides that Joe presented, those are the items that we have as confirmed known issues.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. And what tables were analyzed by DCRI? So the risk adjusted data, what tables were analyzed by DCRI and what are done by IQVIA? So any risk adjusted table, risk adjusted data is done by DCRI. So any of your non-risk adjusted data is done by IQVIA. So all of the lesion specifics are calculated by IQVIA. Tables 18 and 19, the non-risk adjusted portions are done by IQVIA. Melanie, other?
Table 16 with model 1, that's risk adjusted, that comes from DCRI. There are certain calculations, and when you review the spreadsheet that's available in the library, there's also variables that come from DCRI where they have assignments that are done on their end due to the analysis results, such as the index operation assignment and where those cases are updated potentially by DCRI. So there is a tab, I believe, in the calculation spreadsheet that's available in the library. There is a tab that indicates the specific variables that are also included in the calculations when you review each of the tables. So you can see the specific items that are coming in from DCRI also.
Great. Yeah, and that answers Heidi's next question. Is there a list of
Mhm.
variances? Yep.
Yes,
And Dita, the document, all of the risk adjusted information on the risk adjustment, tape models, table 16, all of those details are in the analysis overview, which is available in the IQVIA library. Also in prior reports, we had appendix notations. Are those in the library for our new, okay. Are those in the library for our new report? As they are not in the library. So which appendices are you referring to? Appendix C is in the library. I believe Appendix E and F. The other appendices are in the library. Whatever appendices were included in the previous report are also included in the IQVIA library. And Vera, I'll be following up with you, and I believe IQVIA is following up with you as well regarding the risk adjusted results.
that is
So-
correct. We
Yep.
did receive the confirmation from DCRI Bureau.
All right. Is table 18 supposed to do discharge date or database discharge date for postoperative length of stay calculation?
It should be the database
Yeah, it's database
discharge
discharge date.
date.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's done on database discharge date.
And it will be noted in that calculation spreadsheet too. Right, Melanie? I'm pretty sure it's database discharge date.
Correct.
Yep. Report calculation spreadsheet says hospital discharge.
We'll take a look and see. Thanks for raising that. I actually pulled the sheet up and we will take a look to confirm.
Okay. Can the STS offer any information in regards to the plan for US World News Report? Have there been any communication from your end? We have not heard anything yet on our end. I don't know, maybe Dr. Jacobs can speak to that. I don't.
Yeah, I can speak to that, not as an official STS position, but as a member of the committee that that writes the US News surveys and questions. And the US News plans are to release a survey this year, much like the pre-COVID surveys. So they're going to do it just like prior to COVID, and they will be using the STS feedback report information in a similar fashion to before. Really, the only difference as far as which data they're going to harvest from the current feedback report is that they will not be able to gather the number of hybrid procedures done at a site because that's not in the current feedback report. They'll capture the number of Norwood procedures from the hypoplastic left heart syndrome lesion specific table, but this year they won't be capturing the number of hybrid procedures. Other than that, they will be capturing the same information that they've traditionally captured from table 1 and from table 16. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Jacobs. So once you confirm how the length of stay is calculated, can you provide clarification back to the entire group? So yes, we can, once Melanie's had a chance to look into it and we confirm everything, we can present that on the next webinar. So absolutely, we can clarify that. Yes, yes. Yes, and Brooke, yes, we will confirm once Melanie takes a look at, and we will clarify on our next webinar. All right, does anyone have anything they would like to add? Thank you, Heidi, I see you're typing. I got it. Will the hybrid procedures be captured in future reports?
Yeah, so the plans, I spoke with Ram Subramanian about this just this past week. And I know that STS is planning on resuscitating the table that used to have the number of each operation done, both within an institution and aggregate. I think it was the old table 5. And that table is going to be resuscitated. I don't know if it's going to be in the next harvest or the harvest after that, but Rom tells me that the plans are to resuscitate that table. And when that table is resuscitated, then we would have an official case count of each given site and the aggregate, as well as the mortality of each given site and the aggregate, as we have for the last 20 years. So plans exist to resuscitate that table. I just don't know if it's going to be the next harvest or the following harvest.
Great.
And then obviously when that table is resuscitated, then US News can decide whether or not if they want to go back and capture it. My guess is that they will.
Right. Yeah, that would be a conversation that we need to have with IQVIA and providing that information.
Well, and it has to be agreed to by the task force that that's what we want to use for as part of the what's publicly reported. So,
But no, this, John, I wasn't talking about public reporting. This is just what goes back into the feedback report. This has nothing to do with public reporting.
right, but doesn't US News and World Report only take the information from STS? That's
No, US News takes no information from STS public reporting. The sites do screen captures of their feedback reports and send it to US News. That's how they capture their data. So,
but STS doesn't provide that data directly to US News. That's
No.
Never has.
right. I understand that, but I just think it's worth clarifying that. So
Yeah.
it's up to every center what they report.
Correct.
There are, US News and World Report, just like anyone who has access to the internet can see what's on the STS public reporting site, including US News if they want it. So I don't know their internal processes. Maybe you know better, Jeff, but
I do know that they don't take anything from the public reporting website. What they do is they ask sites that are completing their survey to voluntarily provide numbers of cases, numbers of operations, numbers of various outcomes. And then they ask the sites to voluntarily take a photograph or a screen capture of their feedback report and use that as documentation of where the data comes from. So STS provides them with nothing, and they don't take anything from the public reported data. So the only question here is that there's one question that they've previously asked that cannot be documented from feedback reports because table 5 isn't in this year's feedback report. And if STS puts it back in the feedback report, they can go ahead and capture it again if they want to. And Ram tells me that the plans are to put that table back into the feedback report. But again, that has nothing to do with public reporting at all.
Dr. Jacobs, this is Carol. I just have a quick question. I know in our other registries, like for adult cardiac, US News and World Report checks are the only thing that I know that they check for on our STS public reporting webpage is for sites who are publicly reporting, so they get credit for that. Is that something that they do for the congenital as well?
Correct. They do. Well, the way they do it is that they ask a question to the sites. Do you voluntarily publicly report? So it's a question that's asked to the sites. But on a larger scale, every other question that they ask about how many cases do you do, how many Norwoods do you do, how many transplants do you do, they ask the sites to provide documentation to support their answers by taking pictures of their feedback report.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And again, I'm not answering this in any official STS capacity, just as one of several STS surgeons that happens to sit on that committee.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobs. Thank you, Carol. Heidi, this is a great point, Heidi. I like this idea. I might be the only person identifying as a potential need for this. Nonetheless, I think it would be really helpful to have a webinar to go over the new report, provide insights on the new presentation and outcomes, just for a generic overview and educational process. I could use that guidance. I think that's a phenomenal idea, Heidi, and we can talk, and Chassie now will talk about that. And will US News be using spring 22 harvest, and will it be ready in time again?
Right now, the plans are to use the fall 20, the harvest that we just completed, which I guess is the
20.
I don't want to use the wrong word. The one that we just got the results back from. That's the one.
2020.
It ends December 31st, 2020, correct?
The 2020 harvest that was just released?
No.
No, the
Does
2020,
it go through, it doesn't go through June, does it?
yes. The 2020 harvest goes through 7/1/20, 7/1/2016 through 6/30/2020.
Okay, fine.
And that's what US News is planning on using this time, because that one's already available. And so that's what they plan to use at the moment.
When will public reporting be updated? So if you have public reporting, for any public reporting questions, please reach out to Sydney Clinton at STS.org. She handles all things public reporting. To be honest, I don't know the correct answer to that off the top of my head. But Sydney would be your point person for any public reporting related questions. Again, she can be reached at sclinton@sts.org, and that's here. Let me put in the chat box. sclinton@sts.org for public reporting. And I misspelled reporting, so apologize. Let's see here. On table 18, can we have a second calculation for median time to intubation, one that includes patients extubated in the OR and the calculation of the median? So Angie, if you could submit that to IQVIA as an enhancement request, that way we can keep track of these questions and requests for enhancement. That's something that we can decide and discuss with IQVIA and, as a possible enhancement to the platform. So if you could please submit that, that would be awesome. I asked public reporting. If looking at my Ross procedures in the dashboard, can I drill down to identify those patients that had the procedures? If you're looking in the non-risk adjusted dashboard, Heidi, but they should be able to drill down right now.
Sorry, Leanne.
Yeah.
Drill down within the risk adjusted?
Yeah,
On
within
which
risk
table?
adjusted and non-risk adjusted.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's an option. Mhm.
Oh yeah, either one. Yeah.
Either one. And when you select that result in the risk adjusted report, you'll see an option where it says see details, and that will provide you the view for the drill down.
Let's see. For U.S. News to use the report we just got will be harmful. Okay. Yeah. You would have to, McCall, for U.S. News related issues, you would have to reach out to U.S. News directly because STS doesn't have anything to do with what U.S. News uses. So if you have questions for U.S. News, if you could reach out to them directly, they could respond to those questions for you.
And also, Leanne, I just wanted to indicate, McCall, if you're seeing an issue with reassignment, if you haven't already logged a ticket with the support team, we would be able to take a look at that. Again, the reassignment for analysis is done by DCRI. So that information does come back in their files. So we would need to, if anything, if you haven't logged that ticket, we would be able to take a look at that information and provide you details of what's being sent.
Right. And Janet, I know Janet, you had raised a question about table 1 versus 18 and 19, and I know we're looking into that. So that is being reviewed. We discussed that.
And Janet, I also, sorry, Leanne.
That's okay. Janet,
in regards to table 1, if you could also just reach out, I did send you a message. So I just needed to probably get more details. If you can, when you have a moment, provide the details. But I just sent a message to you.
Okay. Kelly has her hand raised. All right. We've got 2 hands raised. All right. Hold on. I think you're unmuted, Kelly.
Yes. So I have a question, and I just want to confirm that Dr. Jacobs said that they were going to use U.S. News World Report is planning on using the report that is currently published with data up until June 30th of 2021. However, my concern is
the current report doesn't have data up through June 30th, 2021. I think it has data up through June 30th, 2020.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, June 30th, 2020. That report does not include the analysis of the 16 new procedures.
Right.
Right.
Correct. And I think that's an issue because that was a mistake that's been made on our end, at STS's end, by analyzing those 16 new procedures incorrectly. When US News planned to move forward with their current survey and using the new data, they were unaware that that we had made this mistake on the STS side. Because we have only become recently aware of that in the last week or two. So I don't think that there's been a lot of decisions made on what's going to happen. US News made a plan based on the fact that the STS report would not have this error. Now that this error is in place, I don't know what's going to happen. This is not the venue where US News makes their decisions, but obviously US News is going to have to digest the fact that there's an error in the current feedback report and then decide what they're going to do based on that, which is a decision that's made not by STS by any means, but made by US News. And I don't think that decision's been made yet, because this error of these 16 new procedures being analyzed incorrectly, at least in part, and maybe in total, was not knowledge at the last US News phone conference, which was probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Okay, so they are now aware of it and they're using that information to make decisions moving forward. I'm just wondering if this is something that we need to escalate to our leadership internally and let them know, so they can further escalate it to US News will report.
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
Well,
So
I think
do
it's a
we-
process. It's a process question, with this, and how is it that you get US News and World Report to be aware of this, right?
Correct, yes, thank you.
Right. So I would argue that the best way to do that is to, have the data or have the input come to US News and World Report from multiple sources. So I would say go through your hospital administration, go through the people who are part of this database committee, Dr. Jacobs being the first one that comes to mind, make sure that we're conveying the data through that vehicle. Any other pathways to US News and World Report, maybe you should write directly yourself. They just need to have an overwhelming, I would say, if I were trying to organize the politics here, as many phone calls to your congressman or senator's office or equivalent, which is US News and World Report, right?
Okay.
They just need to keep hearing it over and over again, and then they'll respond. I doubt they're going to take one person's word for it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Dr. Meyer, Dr. Jacobs. All right, McCall. Hi, McCall.
Hi, thank you. So I just my issue that I brought up before was also about the 16 procedures. So, and I think I brought it up as a beta tester a long time ago. And what happened, so if maybe the STS can send an email to all the surgeons and let them know about the issue. And then also, because US News and World Report are using table 1 and table 16, and it's not that's how it's been, and it seems like that's how it's going to continue. So sending inaccurate mortality rates is kind of, I don't know, not fair is the right thing, but to say, but if a surgery in the end is assigned to a PFO instead of a PA reconstruction, which is a stat 4, and assigned to a PFO or contact reoperation is a stat 1, I think it's a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, Dr. Meyer and Dr. Jacobs, if you can
No, I think
comment on it.
No, I think you're exactly right. I mean, we went through the whole process of assigning, through, not exactly data driven, but, expert opinion driven process to get numbers for those, at least at the first round.
Mhm.
And, you're right. I mean, we should try to correct that error. I don't know, and I'm not sure, we just sort of were made aware of it, as Dr. Jacobs mentioned, that, at the last task force call, basically, is when many of us became aware of this. And I'm not sure we decided, what was the right course of action at that point, but I think I'm hearing what everyone is saying, and I think, we have to have a plan here. And are we just going to let incomplete or imperfect information sit out there? Or are we going to try to, ask DCRI to redo things? I mean, this gets very complicated, so I don't want to
Yeah,
create
Yeah.
any false expectations here, but
Right.
John, you're absolutely right. And realistically, it's well beyond US News. People use these feedback reports for a lot of reasons.
yeah,
US News is one of them, but they use them within their hospitals. They use them within their internal quality improvement processes. And this error involving misclassification of 16 operations clearly affects a minority of the operations in the database, but its overall impact on assessment of programmatic outcomes is unknown.
well,
Um,
I think
And,
the only,
that's a problem.
yeah, it is a problem. And
Yeah.
I would just remind everyone that the papers are getting submitted this week again. But when we looked at this, by the other methodology, which is, the so-called Harvard project that I've been involved in, we found out that 1% of the diagnosis and procedure categories that we defined account for 27% of the mortalities. So many of these combination procedures that you see were developed, along this parallel path, which was to redo the stat system, particularly in response to that. My guesstimate is that a number of those 16 combination procedures actually have more than trivial mortality rates. And so obviously then they're going to affect the whole risk adjustment and risk calculation. And, are you performing better than expected, worse than expected, or as expected as an institution? So I think it's a real problem. And I must say, I haven't thought this one all the way through, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have to try to do something. But I can't tell you what it is because we haven't, gotten to a conclusion yet.
If I can just add, I went and looked how many we were missing. And in 2018-19, it's 11%. And in 2019-2020, it's actually 15% that were miscoded to a lower stat score. And that's a lot.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
that has implications well beyond US News. It has implications about every single use of these data, from public reporting to anything else. And the question is, when will new data without this error be available? Because that's, obviously the ultimate solution is to have correct data available. And I guess I don't think we're in a position now to know when that's going to be.
This is something we can discuss, because I know on the last task force call, these things would be corrected in the 2021 harvest that's ending in December. So these issues and these specific items would be corrected with the next run, the 2021 report release. That was just, what we had talked about on the call last week.
Right.
But if you would,
I think the question that, if I may speak for the group, I think the question is if whoever it is that's going to try to use this data publicly is going to base anything on the data that's in the current report that we just got back, that's where the angst is coming from.
Yeah, related to public reporting, related to US News, related to all uses of the feedback report.
Yeah.
So
So
then the question really becomes when, if it's not going to get fixed until the upcoming harvest, which now has its new deadline date, or its deadline date, how soon will that data be available? Because that data obviously should solve this problem.
well, one would hope. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
this is Carol. I just wanted to add that the plan is not to rerun this report, but it's to let US News and World Report become aware of this issue so they do not use these results for public reporting, because this update is happening and it will be available within the next few months, coming out to sites in their new report that ends with data from June 30th of 2021.
What's the deadline again for that data to be submitted?
December.
December 10th.
10th, 12th, something, yeah,
Yeah, December 10th.
10th, right.
Mhm.
But it's not going to, if past history is a predictor of future, we're not going to get the information back probably until March, maybe.
No, I don't think it would be March. I think because we would have a quicker turnaround time. One, because IQVIA already has, everything built out. So we would not have that timeline.
Okay.
What's the name of that harvest? Are we calling that the fall 2021 harvest?
It's
No,
the spring fall 2021 harvest.
Combined, it's the
Yes, it's
spring-
combined, right?
it's the combined spring fall 2021 harvest.
Yeah.
right. It's a full year's worth of data, right?
Right, and well, it's a 4-year. It'll be a 4-year
The
analytic
last year
window.
is the calendar year 2021.
And
No.
the last one was
No,
the
it's
combined.
It goes
July
through
through June. It's
Yeah,
July
it
through
goes
June.
through OR dates of June 30th, 2021.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
That's right,
So-
Dr. Meyer.
Yeah, so you're right. I'm sorry, but it's 12 months worth of data is what I was trying to say, and I didn't.
New data.
And
Yeah,
I
12 months of
I
new
didn't
data.
say it very well, but I think the problem is that I don't know what US News's timeline is, but they're probably not going to be totally happy if when we're going to have better data available is a function of
Yeah, but even rerunning this data, Dr. Meyer, I mean, we would still be around. I mean, we're only talking a couple weeks, right? We're talking a month.
well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna
I don't think
depend
that,
on you.
yeah, I would think that that's a,
The one, I could comment a couple of things on timeline, because John's raising some really important points here. Before I do that, let me ask, what the current harvest that was just released, we call that the combined spring fall 2020?
The
That's right.
2020 harvest, yes.
yeah.
That's the 2020 harvest, and that went through June 30th, 2020. And this one's now going to go through June 30th, 2021.
Correct.
So what, John mentioned the concept past history, and I think that's really important because if we go by how long it took to get the last harvest up, it's possible we might not have data from this harvest till April, May. But if we go by all the previous years before that, we would kind of close out the harvest in the fall and we'd have data available by the STS annual meeting. That was our goal every year, was to have it done at the end of January. My guess is it's going to be sometime in between because as was stated, IQVIA has all the tables built out and it's just a matter of fixing these errors. So it might be that the data comes out in February or March. And if that happens, that would be in time for the US News to work with that data. If the data comes out in May, it would be a problem for US News, as John said. But I think we have to tell them that using the current data is highly problematic.
I would agree.
Ruthie had a question, so I was unmuting. Ruthie, you're unmuted.
Hi, and hi, thank you, Dr. Meyer and Dr. Jacobs, because I think that is a great concern of the data and just
Ruthie,
having errors.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
want to interrupt you, but let me just add a couple of things to that. First of all, I really want to make it very clear to everybody that any of, STS doesn't run the US News. It's a separate thing. And any comment I'm making about it is not an official STS comment or even an STS committee member comment. It's just because I happen to sit on the US News committee and I know what they're doing by being a member of their committee. Their committee has probably 5 STS surgeons on it and also has multiple ACC cardiologists on it. All those people are not sitting in any official position representing STS or ACC. They just happen to be members of both groups. So everything I say, this isn't an official STS answer. It's just a Jeff Jacobs answer, knowing what US News does. But I think John's right. We need to let US News know that there's a problem with the 2020 harvest that we just got back, and that we're hopeful and expectant that that'll be rectified with the 2021 harvest, which we expect to have data from sometime in early to mid 2022. John, does that sound right?
Yeah, I think, it's all we can do. We can't, as you correctly described, we can't control what US News does. And we know from past experience that recommendations have been made by this physician advisory group that have been ignored by US News and their statistical contractors. So, we have a limited amount of control here, unfortunately.
Correct.
We can try to influence, and I think this would be something we could try to influence. But it's not like we have any real control, is the problem. So I wish we did.
No, and that's great. Thank you for adding that. And I didn't really want to touch so much on US News and World Report. I just kind of wanted to touch that even if we had a turnaround, that we get it back in February and March, like ideally, not having to do with US News and World Report, but we still need time to look at that report and see if all the issues were actually addressed. Like, were the surgeries included? Are we going to beta test again before it gets released? So we don't have all these issues. That's kind of what I'm getting to and I'm alluding to.
We would do a review before we release the next data. We would review it before we just threw it out there, without reviewing it.
Yeah, and I think we learned some valuable lessons in the way we reviewed it before. We reviewed aggregate data, but the only way to identify this business about the 16 new procedures being misassigned is to look at site-specific data very closely, especially sites that do a lot of those procedures. So I think we learned better ways to examine and hopefully prevent these errors moving forward.
Thank you.
Maybe Dr. Jacobs or Dr. Meyer would like to take the final question from Amy regarding the accuracy of the data. Because I don't think we want to put out there that all of the data is inaccurate and these reports are unusable. So her question or comment is, but from the sounds of it, centers should not use it either, as it is not accurate.
Well,
it's a tricky question, right, John?
It is. It's not straightforward. I think the concern would be if the data, let's take something sort of uncommon but important. One of the new codes is double outlet right ventricle with AV canal. Well, that's variety of surgical approaches to that defect, as some of you may remember from the AQO. So there are a variety of pathways one could go down. But if you did a complete repair, it's probably going to default to an AV canal because that's a benchmark operation. And then, then it's a question about whether or not your AV canal mortality is going to be pulled in one direction or the other because of the incorporation of the cases with DORB AV canal. So, maybe you could put those 16 cases up, 16 procedures up there, all the other DORVs, the 3410, 3440, 3420, and 3430 are all going to default to DORV repair, which had, one stat score. And I think that probably wouldn't throw you off too much, but when you put all the DORV AV canals in with AV canals, then that becomes a little bit more problematic.
Well, and the other thing I think to add to that, John, is that these PA reconstruction procedures, as an example, that were supposed to be analyzed with the higher level generic PA reconstruction, because we didn't have specific stat scores for the children terms, or the more the terms with more detail, the more detailed terms. They were supposed to be analyzed with the higher level generic term, but apparently what has happened is that they just were not included, and instead the operation was analyzed based on the next highest component procedure, which might have been a PFO closure. So that's really a big problem, because that takes an operation that could be in a stat 3 or 4 category and analyzes it as stat 1, and that really impacts the whole ball game.
Right.
So and it impacts any use of the data then.
Right.
So the degree of impact it will have will be based on how often that happens at a given site.
Yeah. Well, and even in the aggregate, although I don't know how the numbers actually play out, but it could increase the stat score associated with a PFO closure too, because presumably these higher risk operations, right? So it's sort of, in unpredictable ways, or at least the magnitude of the effect is hard for me to just.
It's unknown. It's unknown.
I can't estimate it right now, other than a couple of the examples that we've talked about. And the double root translocations, I have no idea where they're going to go, whether or not they're just not going to get counted, or if they're going to get counted as a Rastelli or a switch, or who knows what, or so it all depends how it was coded, because it's going to go looking for the secondary or tertiary, whatever procedure in the list has got the highest stat score if you add sub procedures. So I don't know, and it's hard to predict or imagine exactly what the magnitude of the impact is going to be, other than a couple of the examples that we've cited that I think we can intuitively guess about what the impact would be.
Dr. Meyer and Dr. Jacobs, that's really helpful information. Thank you very much. I have a question. So was this, I don't believe this was the first report that we ran with 3.41. So is that correct?
That is correct.
So what happened in the previous reports? Were these issues still there as well?
Actually, let me, that may not be correct.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'd have to go back and look.
This data went through June 30th of 2020. So did we run a report? And I think 3.41 was released in 2019.
January 18th. Yeah, January 2019.
And the data we publicly report now only goes through 2018.
Right. So we're not even publicly reporting any of this yet, but I don't think this.
No, but that also means that we've never had a feedback report with these new procedures yet. We developed a method under John's leadership to assign stat scores to all these new procedures in preparation for the first time we were going to have them show up in a feedback report.
Oh, I understand. So it wasn't tied to the start of the version.
Correct.
It was okay. I understand.
Well, it had to be tied to when data from the version showed up at DCRI, which was, at least 6 months after the start of the version.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the first time that we've done a feedback report analysis with this new version and with this new methodology that we developed under John's leadership. And so it's not like we analyzed these procedures before correctly and now we haven't. We developed a strategy to analyze these procedures, but we failed to implement it properly.
Okay, so how was it? So say that you did one of these procedures and the way, and I'm sorry, I know we're going over, I just want to understand this better, but just let's say we did one of these procedures and it doesn't have a stat score assigned to it and it's falling to the lowest stat score that could be assigned to it by the procedure combination. What, how was that, if that same procedure was coded in a previous analysis, what stat score was assigned to it?
The higher level generic term. So for example, if we look at 550 PA reconstruction branch peripheral at or beyond the first lobar branch, that term was there with different words. But then if we look at 3360 and 3350 under it, beyond the first segmental branch and proximal to the first segmental branch, those are two new terms. So prior to this harvest, the only option was to choose 550. And it got the stat score of 550. Then we said, okay, now we have these new terms that are showing up for the first time in this harvest, 3350 and 3360. Until they have stat scores, we're just going to give them the stat score of 550, which is the way it would have been coded at all previous harvests. So sites now use these new terms, 3350 and 3360, as they were instructed to do so, expecting that it would still have the stat score that 550 would have had. Unfortunately, we failed on the implementation, and instead it got no stat score. So the operation is assigned the stat score of a different component, which could be PFO closure.
Got it. Okay.
Hey, Jeff, can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Janet. We also were telling data managers in 19 to code the less specific term as procedure 1 because the stat scores weren't available, and the more specific term as procedure 2, which is why in previous analysis the procedures ended up in the right groups. But we had since counseled them that they were no longer required to do that, and they could just use the 341 terms.
Yeah.
Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, which means that if you don't have one of the procedures as a secondary or tertiary or someplace else for what would normally have been the primary code, then that means it's like nothing in the PA reconstruction realm got considered. That's the problem.
Right.
And,
so that's how we fixed it in 19. But we told people they didn't have to keep doing that.
Right. I understand that. We all had good intentions.
But this every upgrade we've had to do this where we had new procedures added, and we always came up with scores to assign those procedures using the same methodology that John implemented for this upgrade. Where it fell apart was not that we didn't create new scores for them, but we failed to implement them within the analytics at the level of the harvest, whereas previous times we did. So that appendix table that has the stat scores in the feedback reports in the previous PDF files even, it would have a series of asterisks next to new terms that were added so that it would say, well, all the stat scores in this table were published in the 2009 manuscript, with the exception of the following set of terms that did not get published in that new manuscript, but were assigned a stat score at each given upgrade. And it would have a 1, 2, or 3 asterisks showing when it got its score assigned. And we did that this time, but in previous versions, when we did it, it was implemented at DCRI without difficulty. This time we did it, but it was not implemented by DCRI. So that's where the trouble rises. It may be that this can be fixed in time for the combined spring fall 2021 harvest, and then we all can move forward having this problem behind us. But clearly there's a lot of challenges to using the current data for public reporting or US News because of this error.
Yes, agree.
John, did I get that right? It's really complicated.
I think so.
I ask because it's so complicated. I want to have somebody.
Right. Well, that's what I try to do too, is make sure the what's coming out of my mouth is what's going around in the neurons. But
well, and STS is planning a formal communication this week. I'm working on that, and before that goes out, obviously, it's going to be reviewed by Dr. Subramanian, Dr. Jacobs, Dr. Meyer, just make sure that I'm capturing everything correctly. So all of this will be explained and sent out to the congenital community. We had that just discussed it on the task force call last week. But again, I'm working on that communication, and it will be going out to all of the surgeons, all the data managers. It'll be a mass communication. I've got to work with marketing to get it out, but it will be going out this week. So.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, this is sufficiently complicated that I didn't quite, and this discussion today has actually been useful in helping me, sort all of this out, because when we talked about it last Tuesday, I don't think most of us on the call, at least I didn't, understand exactly what all the implications were. And now it's much clearer, and I appreciate all the feedback from the data managers to sort of crystallize what the questions and where the holes are in the analytics and what the impact is. So thank you all for that.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today, and all this discussion is amazing and so helpful. It's quarter after, we're significantly over. So I know we all have other meetings to get to. So thank you for your time. Again, formal communication will be coming out from STS this week. So please stay tuned. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me.
Hey, Leanne.
Yes, sir.
When that gets drafted, I know that Ram, John, and I are all happy to look it over. And I think there's value in having multiple eyes look at this, because this is a really complicated issue to explain. So let me know what I can do to help, and I'm sure John's also willing to.
That's why it's taking so long to draft the email, to draft the letter.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Making my head hurt, Dr. Jacobs.
Yeah, I think it would be good to actually include a few specific examples to, maybe some of the ones we talked about today, because that'll make it clearer for the, for people who don't live and breathe and think database all the time to understand.
Absolutely. All right. Well, just stay tuned, because I'm going to be sending you some emails for review. So thank you very much. Thank you guys all very much for your time today. I greatly appreciate it. It's a great discussion, very much needed. Again, here's my email. If you need anything, just shoot me an email, and our next webinar will follow up. Our next monthly webinar is the 18th. So I'll talk to Chastity, and we'll get topics. And I know many of you asked for a review of the walkthrough of the current report format. So I think that's a great thing for us to touch on next week. So with that, I'll see you all next week. November, is it next week or is it 2 weeks? Anyway, the days all run together. The next 2 weeks, November 18th at 12 p.m. Central. Thanks, everybody. You guys are amazing. I appreciate you all so very much. Thank you.
Thank you.